Okay guys, we're going to walk through a one-point constructed perspective in this video. Okay, so on the worksheet we've got a space that is a single room with one wall missing, cut away. We've got a couple of steps that get us up to a platform. We've got a window and a door at the back in the elevation. We see that door. If you measure it, it's about 1/8 of an inch equals a foot. The door's head is at 8 feet. The window head is also at 8 feet, and the window sill is about 2 feet. We don't actually need to be able to measure this to draw it in perspective, and I'll show you how that works in a few minutes. But just so you're aware, the top of the door window are lined up, and then the stair ends right where the window ends. Okay, so to get started, we have our station point located here, and then we have our picture plane located at the very front of the space. And then down here in the elevation, we can see we have a horizon line at 5 feet above the floor, passing right through the eyes of our scale figure. And then our floor has some thickness as well as the ceiling. So in order to get started, we need to first pull our ground line over. We're going to be drawing relatively lightly at first because these are just construction lines. Because the picture plane is at the edge of the room, at the picture plane is the only place in the constructed perspective method where you can measure heights. So I'm going to bring in a vertical line directly down from my station point in a one-point perspective, where that line directly vertical from the station point crosses the horizon line. That is your single vanishing point. So I'm going to label that VP, just so you guys know what we're talking about. And all vertical lines in the drawing will follow the same process. We draw a straight line from the station point to the point that we want to project the vertical line. So this interior edge of the wall there, I'm going to draw a light construction line. And then wherever that line crosses the picture plane, which it happens to be right where it meets the geometry, we're going to bring a line down perfectly vertical from that point. So we'll draw a construction line down and bring it all the way through the ground line. We'll do that one more time for the other side of that wall. We'll start this process by defining the overall room space, and wherever that crosses the picture plane, we're going to bring a line straight down. It gets a little trickier when we go to the back of the room, but it follows the same process. Connect the dots from the station point to the back corner of the room, and we're not going to bring the line down from there, but it is where that line crosses the picture plane. It's very important that we stick to that. The vertical lines only come from the picture plane. We're just going to bring it down further than we need it, and we'll come back and darken in where we want the line to start and stop later. So let's get the other corner of the back of the room. We'll switch to a smaller triangle for this. So from the station point to the back corner of the room, there we are. And then where that crosses the line, we'll bring a vertical down. I'll do that in just a minute. But I also want to get these lines connected here. Station point to that edge of the wall, and station point to the opposite side. Okay, so where those three cross the picture plane, we'll bring a line down vertically all the way through the ground line. And again, these are all very light so that they disappear when it's all over. Okay, so with these lines in place, we have our vanishing point located, and we have the edges of our room. But now we need to get the top and bottom located, and for that we use the elevation. The point of a constructed perspective drawing is that you can take two orthographic drawings, the elevation of the plan, and construct the perspective precisely. So at the picture plane, that is where we can measure all of the heights line up with the elevation. And so that's where we can measure. We can't measure heights in the perspective drawing away from the picture plane, only at the picture plane. So in order to translate the height of the floor, the height of the walls, and the height of the roof here, we're going to bring all of those, translate all of those heights over from the elevation. I'm going to transfer this over. While we're at it, we'll go ahead and transfer the window sill height, the door and window head heights, the ceiling height, and the roof height. So all of that's been brought over. And then we can work with it as it all aligns there. So now that we have these things here. We have to kind of keep track of which is which. But at this particular intersection right here, this is where the ceiling meets the inside of the wall. So from that intersection, we can draw a line towards the vanishing point, a construction line towards the vanishing point. That will describe the interior crease, or the interior seam, where the top of this wall on the right meets the ceiling. And then from this vanishing point, we can also go to the this line where the interior of that wall meets the top of the ceiling that's been brought over here. So we'll draw that line to the vanishing point. And we can see that where it crosses this line, which is the back edge, that spot right there should be perfectly horizontal with where this vertical line here crosses that line that's receding to the vanishing point. And it looks like they are perfectly horizontal. So that is the back edge or seam where the back wall meets the ceiling. And so if we go ahead and darken those lines in a bit so we can tell them apart from the construction lines, we can start to see the ceiling of this space coming together. Most of constructed perspective drawings involve projecting lines vertically from the plan, a few horizontally from the elevation, and then towards the vanishing point. Those are the only options in terms of line direction: towards the vanishing point, horizontal, or vertical. Okay, so we have our ceiling. Let's go ahead and define the walls. Where this building sits on the ground here at the front, it actually rests on the earth here at the bottom. And we can go ahead and draw. You can go ahead and darken that line to show the bottom of the building. But that is not the floor surface, but it's the bottom of the foundation, we'll call it. Up at this line here, that is our floor surface. So at that point, at that height, we can draw a line that represents the floor. And I don't want to draw where I have these stairs yet, so I'm not going to darken it in all the way, but I'm just going to come close to it for now. We'll figure out where that line ends in a little bit, but that defines the floor surface, and this is the bottom of the foundation. And then from here, I can bring the interior wall up to meet the ceiling, and then from this intersection, we can bring a line towards our vanishing point. And then once that line meets with this vertical line, I'll go ahead and continue just to have the construction line there, but when it meets this vertical line of the back corner, that's where the two walls meet. And so we can stop the weight of it there, the darkened portion, and now we have that left wall defined. So from there, this is where, if we go horizontal from there over, that is where that is the height, the level at which that horizontal line defines the back of the floor. So we're just going to draw a construction line for now until it meets there. And we can go ahead and darken it. And then the right-hand wall meets the back wall at that point. And then we can go ahead and a line that goes from the vanishing point through that intersection will define the last seam where the wall meets the floor there. And that happens to line up with this point. So all of that works out. So this is just a basic cube of space that now has two walls and a ceiling described. And then I'm going to switch to a slightly heavier pen to describe or pencil to describe the exterior, the outline shape. there, there, and there. Okay, so that ceiling thickness, floor thickness, and wall thicknesses essentially mimics what's going on in the elevation here. So they should be essentially the same. A one-point perspective in which the picture plane is on that front edge is going to take up the same space on the paper as the elevation. If this picture plane were at the back of the space, the back wall would be the size of the elevation, and everything in the foreground would be coming at you much in a much more fisheye, zoomed out lens, where and the drawing would be much larger in paper space. So keep that in mind as you're kind of predicting the size of your perspective image. Okay, so we have the overall room. We need to place the stairs, the window, and the door accurately in here. So let's start with the window and the door, and to get their heights, we need to measure their height at the picture plane. So neither the window nor the door fall on the picture plane, but we can find that height at the picture plane and project it back. So we already brought this line over earlier, that from the elevation translates the height of the window and door head or top to this point here. So from that point, I'm going to draw a construction line back towards the vanishing point, but only along the wall there. And then from that point where it hits, where the right-hand wall meets the back wall, we are going to draw a horizontal line, which represents how that height travels across the back wall. Because we're moving parallel to the picture plane in space, we are drawing a horizontal line. Anytime we're moving perpendicular to the picture plane in space, the line is moving towards the vanishing point. So this line describes the height at which the top of the window occurs, and then when it turns along the back wall, that is the height at which the top of the door occurs. So to get the vertical lines for those two elements, we use the same process that we did to get the other vertical lines, which is tracing a line from the station point towards those edges in the plan drawing. So if we want the leading edge of the window here, we draw a line to the station point, and then where that line that we just drew crosses the picture plane, we bring a line down precisely vertical from there. And I'm just going to make it extra light, but that line will define the edge of our window here on the wall. And then let's do it one more time from the station point to the back edge of the window. And so from that point right there, we're going to bring a line perfectly vertical. And then while we're at it, we're going to get this outer edge of the wall too, because we will see the thickness of the wall in this view of the window. So in this situation, there is a piece of glass drawn in the plan and in the elevation, but what I'd like you to, don't worry about drawing the glass, just get the opening reflected in the perspective for this exercise. So where those two lines cross the picture plane, we've already brought one down, we'll bring the other vertical line down, and be sure to be as precise as you can about this, because those parallel lines that are close, you want to keep them parallel. So we have now the elements of our window located here. Last thing we need to do is find the window sill. So we trace this line that we brought over. We can't use it where it crosses those vertical lines. We have to, that height is only accurate at the picture plane, so all the way over to here. And from there, we trace a line back to the vanishing point. And that describes the sill of the window, or the height at which the sill occurs. So with those lines in place, it's pretty easy to see which ones are going to define the window. And I'm going to use a little bit more pressure on my lines this time to darken them up. We're going to pay attention to where they stop and start, and we are just tracing the lines that exist here. So to describe the interface of the window on that wall, there's a couple of little short lines that we're going to need to draw after that in order to show the thickness of that wall. So now that we have the rectangle that shows the interior space of the window, right at this corner, before we don't just draw this second vertical line to show the thickness. In this situation, we will see a little bit of the underside of the window head and the window sill. So in order to, before we project those lines over, we need two very short little horizontal lines coming over from there to there and from there to there, right? And those two little short lines can now, from the end of those, projecting from the vanishing point through that point, we can finish the window head and the window sill. All right, and then we can finish that last vertical line. And now we have a complete window described there. Be careful with your line weights and your pencil when making little dots that hope you connect the dots. Okay, now let's find the door here. We know the height of the door. We just need to find the vertical lines, and this process gets repetitive after a while. So from the station point to the line that in the plan drawing that you're trying to translate down, and then we'll get a line to the interface of the wall, and then a line to the outer face of the wall. And where those items cross the picture plane, we bring them down vertically. And those two are very close to one another. So we're going to be real careful that we get those just right. And from there down. And so now we have the overall lines here that form our doorway. So we can darken the appropriate ones in. And now let me go ahead and get the interior face of this door described. There is a tiny little perspective line where the door thickness is receding in space that we need to represent. But let's get the interior face drawn and then we'll worry about that. So that little bit of receding space is going to happen right in this top right corner. So we're just sending that just the tiniest amount towards the vanishing point. And then from there, we can darken our vertical line. And we can add the horizontal line that shows the thickness of the head of the door. And we really have the same situation going on at the bottom. All right, so we need a short little line describing where the floor passes through the threshold of that door back a bit, and then where those two lines meet at the bottom right hand corner of the door, we can bring our last horizontal line over to show how the floor extends back a bit. And so this lower line here, and I'd recommend using your eraser shield if you end up making that mistake, but this is why we practice first before we do the final. But that line should come over here, go up, and go back, because the floor does recede into the doorway there. Okay, so now we have our door, or our doorway at least. Last thing we need to take care of is the steps. Steps can be a little tricky, but they're really no different than the big floor area. It's just two small floors, so we find them in the same way we've been finding all of the rest of this. So let's get this front edge of the step here. Luckily it's on the picture plane, so we can just pull that height over directly from the elevation. Then while we're here, we'll slide up and bring the next step over, but keep in mind we have to project it back before we use that height. But this first line that we drew, we can use that dimension, that height for the step, but we need to figure out where it ends. So to figure out the vertical edge, we would connect a line from the station point to where that line ends, but because it's on the picture plane, we don't have to. We just bring that line directly down from the picture plane. And that defines the edge of the total length of our first step. So I'm going to darken that line so we know it's a keeper. And that will also let us bring the rest of this vertical line down here to define the interior of the wall. So this line here, where the floor meets the wall, some portion of it is going to need to go away where the steps, back to where the steps begin. Actually, we can see that the steps end right where the window begins. So if we carry this line right down here, we know that that is the portion of that seam that's going to end up being removed. So we'll go ahead and pull that away. And then at this point, we know that the steps are going to go, there'll be a vertical edge that comes up to the floor height to define this area of floor here. So we can bring that all the way up to the floor height. And then we can finish this connection right here. Okay, so now we just need to draw the last couple of steps, edges that fall in this area. So from this point here, the floor that recedes directly back into space, that line is going to be going in our perspective drawing. Any line that goes perpendicular to the picture plane is going to be a line in the direction of the vanishing point in our perspective drawing. So from that point towards the vanishing point, so that edge is going to follow this line, and then where does it end? Where is this horizontal line? To find that, we've got to project from the station point to that point on the plan drawing. And here you have to be very precise. You're right on target with these lines. And so from where that line crosses the picture plane, that point right there, we need to project that point down, again, very precisely. And that is going to tell us where this line ends. And that should be exactly horizontal with this point right here, directly below the window where that line meets the floor there. Those should be perfectly horizontal with one another. And it looks like that works out pretty well. All right. And so now we can darken this bit. It goes from that point to the vanishing point. Now we've got two of our 3 step edges. We just need to get the zigzag in this area and that final step edge in there. So this point here where our construction line meets the front wall, that is the true height of the step at the picture plane. And so we need to project that back towards the vanishing point with a construction line. And then to find the vertical edge, same way we find all the vertical edges in here, we go from the station point to that point on the floor plane, and where that line crosses the picture plane, we project it down vertically. So right here, sometimes it gets confusing. All of these projections down. That's why I suggest that you do them one at a time. Don't try to make all of them because you'll get confused which is which. But now that we've brought that line down, this is the point at which this stair that was receding back, when actually this line that I've drawn here is in the wrong spot. It needs to come from the top of the step, not the top of the wall. So this is the edge of our step down to this corner. But that line that I had drawn is going to come back and define the back of the step. So if you can, you'll see it a bit better on yours where you can zoom in closer. But this point right here, down to that point right there, that is the edge of our step. So I'm going to darken the line so you can see which ones I'm describing. This is the trouble with steps, is they just get so tiny in these drawings. But there's the horizontal, and then there is the vertical edge of that step. And now all horizontal lines. Oops, I did go over to the wrong vertical there. Started it too early. So it stops at that vertical line there. And then from there, we'll continue back to the vanishing point, one more step. And then we connect to that dot. And then at the points of that zigzag, we extend a horizontal line, and it will disappear behind the plinth. And then just to wrap it up, we're going to darken this line in one more time. It goes back towards the vanishing point. There we go. So now we've completed all the geometry of the drawing. The last step would be adding our heavy line weights. So anything that is on the outline will darken up. So that would definitely be the bottom here, the top, and the vertical. And then also getting darkened is anything that describes space beyond. So the interior of this window, as well as that one, as well as the door opening at the back. All right, and there we go. That is the one-point constructed perspective. All of these interior crease lines would want to be a medium line weight, and then any of the smaller folds you might do at a lighter line weight. Okay, good luck with your own one-point perspectives.